What happens when aggression meets discipline? A lesson these bikers won't forget. It was a breezy Saturday evening at a small park on the edge of Fairfield, Connecticut. The kind of evening where families gathered, kids played soccer, and teens sat on benches with earbuds in, scrolling through their phones. 16-year-old Caleb was one of them, sitting by himself under a tall oak tree. His younger brother Eli was finishing up soccer practice, and Caleb had promised his mum he'd wait to walk him home. Caleb, wearing a fitted black suit with a crisp white shirt and polished black shoes, kept to himself, casually flipping through a book he'd brought along. He didn't look up when the rumble of motorcycles broke through the air. It was the type of sound that usually didn't mean much, just a group of bikers passing through, their engines echoing louder than they should in a quiet space. But tonight something was different. The bikers didn't pass through. Instead, they rolled in, parking their bikes near the soccer field. 5 of them, dressed in leather jackets and dark jeans, stood out in sharp contrast to the families gathered around. They weren't laughing or chatting among themselves. They were scanning the park, their eyes locking onto Caleb as if he were a target. Caleb noticed them too. He glanced up briefly, catching their stares. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but the way they looked at him made his stomach knot slightly. He turned back to his book, forcing himself to stay calm. But calm doesn't last long when you're being watched. The bikers didn't stay by their bikes. One of them, a burly man with a shaved head, nudged his friend and started walking toward Caleb, and that's when things began to shift. Caleb felt the man's heavy footsteps before he saw him clearly. He glanced up only to find the burly biker flanked by 2 others, their expressions unreadable but intent. The group moved with purpose, their leather boots crunching against the gravel pathway as they closed the distance. Caleb's heart thudded in his chest, but his face remained calm. His mum always said, "Never let them see you sweat." He thought of her voice, steady and grounding, as he dog-eared the page in his book and set it aside. "What are you doing here, kid?" the burly man asked, his voice gruff and direct. Caleb hesitated, his eyebrows knitting slightly in confusion. "Waiting for my brother," he replied simply, his tone polite but firm. The man smirked, exchanging a glance with his friends. "This doesn't look like your kind of place," he said, his words laced with something unspoken but pointed. Caleb's jaw tightened, though he forced himself to remain composed. "It's a public park," he answered, meeting the man's gaze. The biker's smirk faded. "Got a smart mouth, huh?" he said, stepping closer. The other 2 spread out slightly, creating a semicircle around Caleb. Parents and kids were still scattered around the park, but no one seemed to notice the tension building under the oak tree. Caleb scanned the area briefly, hoping someone would look his way, but the bikers had chosen their moment well. Most of the attention was on the soccer field, where Eli's game was wrapping up. Caleb's mind raced. He wasn't scared, not yet, but the situation was turning and he could feel it. Years of karate training had taught him to observe, anticipate, and react. But he also knew discipline. Fighting wasn't the first option, it was the last. "Look," Caleb said, keeping his tone measured, "I don't want any trouble. I'm just here for my brother." But the burly man didn't back off. Instead, he leaned down slightly, his face just a little too close for comfort. "Trouble? Who said anything about trouble?" he asked, his voice low and taunting. Caleb could feel the weight of their stares, the unspoken challenge in their posture. His hands rested loosely on his knees, but he was ready if it came to that. And yet something about the man's next words made it clear they weren't going to let him off that easily. "Maybe you should show us what you've got," the biker sneered, his friends laughing quietly behind him. But Caleb didn't move yet. Caleb didn't flinch. His hands stayed where they were, resting calmly on his knees, but his eyes stayed locked on the man in front of him. Years of practice had taught him how to read people, how their posture, their movements, even their breathing could give away their intentions. And these men, they weren't here to talk. The burly man, clearly expecting Caleb to fold under the pressure, leaned closer, his shadow falling over him. "What's the matter, kid? You scared?" he taunted. Caleb exhaled slowly, not answering right away. He didn't need to. Fear wasn't the issue here. His issue was time. How long until Eli's game ended? How long until someone in the park noticed what was going on? The burly man, clearly expecting Caleb to fold under the pressure, leaned closer, his shadow falling over him. "What's the matter, kid? You scared?" he taunted. Caleb exhaled slowly, not answering right away. He didn't need to. Fear wasn't the issue here. His issue was time. How long until Eli's game ended? How long until someone in the park noticed what was going on? "Leave him alone." The sudden voice broke through the tension. Caleb turned his head slightly to see a young boy, no older than 10, standing a few yards away. Eli. His little brother had wandered off the field, sweat still glistening on his forehead from the game. "Eli, stay back," Caleb called, his voice firm. But the bikers turned toward the boy, grinning like predators, spotting an easier target. "This your brother?" one of them asked, pointing a gloved finger at Eli. "Maybe we should teach you both a lesson." Caleb felt his pulse quicken, but not with fear, with resolve. He stood up slowly, his movements deliberate, his eyes never leaving the group. He shifted his weight slightly, planting his feet in the stance he'd practiced countless times in the dojo. "Don't touch him," Caleb said, his voice calm but edged with steel. The burly man laughed, shaking his head. "Look at this guy, thinks he's tough." The others joined in, their laughter echoing across the park. But Caleb didn't waver. His expression didn't change, and his stance didn't shift. His silence unnerved them more than he realized. "You're not going to do anything," one of the bikers said, stepping closer. And that's when Caleb finally spoke, his voice low and deliberate. "You don't want to do this." The laughter stopped. The bikers glanced at each other, confused for a moment by the confidence in his tone. But the moment didn't last. The burly man took another step forward, raising a hand to shove Caleb. What happened next was so fast, so unexpected, that even the bikers weren't ready for it. But Caleb was. The burly biker's hand shot forward, aiming to shove Caleb's shoulder, but before it could connect, Caleb shifted to the side with practiced precision, his body moving like a spring released. The biker stumbled slightly, caught off guard, but Caleb didn't stop there. In one fluid motion, he stepped forward, his open palm striking the man's wrist and twisting it away. The biker grunted in pain, his hand dropping to his side as he stepped back, glaring at Caleb with fury in his eyes. "What the—" the man started, but before he could finish, Caleb spoke. "I warned you," he said, his voice calm but firm. The two other bikers rushed forward, clearly not taking the warning seriously. The first swung a wild punch, but Caleb ducked easily, his movement smooth and deliberate. He responded with a sharp kick to the man's knee, sending him crumpling to the ground with a cry of pain. The second man hesitated for a split second, just long enough for Caleb to pivot on his heel and deliver a spinning kick to the side of his ribs. The force knocked the wind out of him, and he staggered backward, clutching his side. By now the burly leader had recovered, his face red with anger. He lunged at Caleb, swinging both fists like a brawler. But Caleb didn't meet brute force with brute force. He stayed light on his feet, dodging the punches with the kind of agility that came from years of training. A crowd began to gather at the edge of the park. Parents, kids, even some players, stopped what they were doing to watch. Someone had pulled out a phone, the lens capturing every second of what was unfolding. For one brief moment, Caleb caught a glimpse of Eli standing at the edge of the crowd, frozen, wide-eyed, his soccer cleats still caked with dirt. Something about seeing his little brother standing there watching made Caleb's chest tighten in a way none of the punches had. The leader charged again, this time trying to grab Caleb by the lapel of his suit jacket, but Caleb moved faster, twisting out of his grip and delivering a precise strike to the man's solar plexus. The biker stumbled backward, gasping for air, his tough exterior cracking in the face of Caleb's calm control. "Enough," Caleb said, his voice loud enough to echo across the park. His stance remained strong, but his expression showed no malice, only resolve. "I don't want to hurt you. Walk away." For a moment it seemed like the bikers might listen. The leader wheezed, holding his chest as he glared at Caleb. The two others were still on the ground, one clutching his knee and the other his ribs. The tension in the air was thick, but Caleb didn't flinch. "Let's go," the leader finally growled, waving at his friends to follow. They limped back to their bikes, muttering curses under their breath as they started their engines. But just as they began to pull away, the leader turned back, pointing a finger at Caleb. "This ain't over, kid," he spat, before roaring off with his crew.